Join me now, Shadow Climate Change and Net Zero Secretary Ed Miliband. Very good morning, good afternoon, excuse me, Mr. Miliband. Thanks so much for joining us. I actually wanted to start, if I may, on the policies overall designed to boost Labour participation. And Rachel Reeves was on with us this morning, said that Labour would look to reverse the changes in pension policy. What would Labour do instead to try and boost Labour participation rates?
Well, look, the big picture on this, and I'll come to your question in a second, is that the IFS, as we heard earlier, are saying this is the worst decade for living standards, frankly, in history, the worst fall in living standards since records began. And I think it's such a contrast, 24 hours on from the budget, between what the experts are now saying and the sort of tone of Jeremy Hunt, which was deeply complacent about what so many families in our country are going through. And that takes me to your point about pensions tax relief. Against that backdrop of a cost of living crisis like we haven't seen for 70 years in this country, the idea that the priority for this budget was to give £1 billion to the top 1% of people in our country strikes us as the wrong priority. Labour wouldn't have done it. We would reverse it. And as for increasing labour supply, there's all kinds of things that we can do. Our Shadow Work and Pension Secretary, Jonathan Ashworth, has come forward with proposals on helping the over 50s back to work. We support measures on childcare. But there's even doubt about whether this will have much of an impact on labour supply, this pensions tax relief change, and it certainly isn't fair.
We've only got a couple of minutes because I know we've got to break the ECB decision. So a broad question about tax policy. Clearly, corporate tax rates are going up, but with various exemptions being thrown in. What would you like to see there? Does that make sense to you to target where the exemptions will be felt, or would Labour just cut corporate taxes?
Well, I tell you one exemption we wouldn't be having, and that is a massive tax relief for the fossil fuel industry, for oil and gas producers. You see, what happened in the budget, and again, this is a sign of the wrong priorities, is that, yes, a windfall tax has been introduced on those big oil and gas companies making record profits, and we called for that for over a year, but the government has introduced a massive loophole to the tune of billions of pounds. Now, we say the right priority for the country is to use those billions of pounds to help tackle the cost of living crisis. And as for growing the economy, which is a massive absence, frankly, from this budget, we would have a proper green prosperity plan to invest in those new industries of the future, like hydrogen, like renewables, like electric vehicle production, because this is the big growth opportunity of the 21st century. And as business is saying, the government is missing the boat on it.
And just finally, Mr. Miliband, do you welcome the growing commitment from the government towards nuclear power?
I support nuclear power, yes. What I find when I listen to the government is that they are very good at proclaiming their commitment and very bad at building nuclear power stations. You know, when we left office in 2009, I had identified, well, in 2010, but in 2009, I identified 10 potential sites for nuclear power stations. One of them is going to have the Hinkley Point power station built on it towards the end of this decade. So, the government likes to talk a lot about nuclear power. It doesn't deliver. And frankly, they've got to deliver across the board. We should get rid of the onshore wind ban. We should speed up and turbocharge solar power. Why? It's the right thing for climate. But crucially, it's the right thing to cut bills too, because we now know that renewables are the cheapest alternative we have in this country.
And I've got time for one more. Finally, the boost to childcare, is that something that Labour welcomes overall?
Yes, we do welcome it. In fact, we've been calling for it. We would like to see it come in as soon as possible. We've shown, for example, that by getting rid of the tax relief for non-DOMs, people who live in Britain but don't pay taxes in Britain, we could actually fund breakfast clubs, which are a crucial part of the childcare package. We'd like to see all of that brought in as quickly as possible. We think certainly the breakfast clubs in every primary school could come in much earlier. But yes, we need to move forward on this and as fast as possible.
Ed Miliband, thank you very much for joining us today. Much appreciated.